We certainly picked a good time to have Matt come on the show. You'll notice Paul's not here today. Paul is out of town, and so I had reached out to Matt to come on. Matt, we picked a good morning to have all this news come out and cover this with the USFL. How are you doing today?
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I'm doing good. I think this is some exciting news. It might not be the greatest for the XFL, but in terms of just football in general and giving people opportunities, it's awesome.
Yeah, and so we're gonna get into all this USFL stuff. So Matt Lyons, he writes for XFL NewsHub, he writes for CFL NewsHub, and I'm sure we'll be having the USFL NewsHub. I think Mark already got the domains and stuff for that. So, tried to have Matt on the show before. We just have never gotten, I don't know, it just has never happened. So Matt's filling in today to co-host. We have a great show coming up. We're going to do all the USFL stuff here, and then we'll probably talk about it more later in the Spring League section too. But we have Dave Campbell coming up. It's the Edmonton Elks season. That's kind of was the lead story. Now it's probably going to be like the USFL lives, the Edmonton Elks season. But Dave Campbell with the Edmonton Elks is coming up. I talked to him yesterday. And then we have Tom Mayenknecht. He's the host of the Sport Market. It's on TSN Radio. Tom does all the CFL sports businessy stuff. And so we've been talking a lot about the C-218 bill with single game sports betting. So we're going to have Tom come on. And then I'm so excited. And Matt, I think you have to be excited for this too. We cover the XFL and all this stuff. We have Paul McCallum. He played in the original XFL back in 2001 as a field goal kicker. He scored the first ever points for the XFL Outlaws back in 2001. And then he's played 23 years for the CFL. He was with the Lions and the Rough Riders and all of that. So, tremendous knowledge there, right?
I figure. Very well decorated too.
Yeah. So how do you feel about our guest lineup today?
I think it's a great lineup of guests. It's very relevant to everything that's been going on in the news too. So, you always do a great job of getting good guests, Reid.
Many hours later.
Hey guys, this is future Reid and Matt here joining you. Paul had just messaged me. He had a work emergency and is going to be unable to join us on the podcast today. We're going to get him on in the future. We're going to do our best to clean up the edits around, but if there's a mention about Paul joining us at some point, that's what happened. So we're going to let you continue with the show now, but just a little preface for what's going on. Thanks so much. I tweeted today, so breaking news right off the top. Matt and I are recording early. I got to go film a memorial service later today. Just came out today, USFL, Brian Wood, CEO of Spring League. They're going to relaunch. It's coming back in next year, 2022. This isn't, the announcement today is surprising. I think what's not surprising, Jake Henry, I'll give him credit, friend of the show. We talked all about this back in January, that Brian was picking up old USFL trademarks with the cities and all of that. Matt, did you follow any of that trademark stuff before all this came out?
A little bit, but I wasn't too in the loop on all that stuff just because I was never too knowledgeable of the USFL in general. It was long before my time. So yeah. I would have never guessed it was coming back.
Yeah, it's tough. Here is, we talk about the XFL, right, with a lot of the baggage and stuff. I think the USFL also has some baggage. I think it's an interesting move. Anyway, so they came out. So Brian had acquired a bunch of the stuff. They're coming back in 2022. They're going to be on Fox. Fox is a minority owner. I have the press release here, Brian Woods, and I kind of thought honestly, the TSL media people were on vacation this week because I just got confirmed we should have a big guest next week coming on. XFL fans will be excited, but I kind of thought they were on vacation. I hadn't heard from them. And then, obviously this makes sense, right? That they were kind of prepping for all this stuff. But so Brian Woods, he says, I'm extremely passionate about football and the opportunity to work with Fox Sports to bring back the USFL in 2022. It was an endeavor worth pursuing. We look forward to providing players a new opportunity to compete in a professional football league and giving fans everywhere the best football viewing product possible during what is typically a period devoid of professional football. You were up early with me this morning. What were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, like I said, I thought it was awesome. It definitely caught me off guard, and it's not going to be it's going to be more competition for the XFL, especially if they're starting a year later than the USFL. But in terms of opportunities for players and coaches and everyone, I think it's great.
Yeah, I think this is, for the players, great. For the fans, great. I think this is horrendous for the XFL. I really do.
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk more about it later with the single game sports betting. That, I think that I kind of think the XFL kind of got a little fleeced here. I really do. I think, with the CFL and all those talks, I think now the CFL is so high on getting this money from the single game sports betting that I don't think that they care where the money is coming from. It is at least what I think. And I'm not, I just talk with people, whatever. That's my feeling, is that it's not. It makes sense to me that the interest in XFL has gone down as the betting interest has gone up, right? Because one way or another, they're going to get some cash, out of this, right? And a change. I think it's bad for that. We talked last week on the show. There's already, do you see all this anti-XFL, anti-rock stuff like I do on Twitter and on the Facebooks?
Definitely. Yeah. I can't really agree. I definitely don't agree with it, but I do see where people are coming from with it, with the CFL, from the CFL side of things. But yeah, sorry, I sort of spaced a little there.
It's hard because, and we talked last week, if the Rock and all that, there was no other option, right? The XFL would have gone away. And so it's hard now. So you have this I am seeing a lot of anti-XFL sentiment. And then now we have this USFL thing coming back next year, right? We've already, it's not been official, right? But we're assuming you like I am, right, that the XFL isn't coming back till 2023.
Yeah, the timeline is just, it doesn't line up anymore. There'd be too much to do in too little time to get it going as big of a deal as they want it to be. So yeah, it will definitely be a challenge. That throws a real wrench in their plans. I think they're going to have to come up with something real big relatively soon to kind of top that if they want to stay relevant and in the forefront of like spring football.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And, I think people will have questions. They'll go, well, how come the spring or, the USFL, how can they, announce in June and then go next year, right? Why can't the XFL do that? And we've talked about it before, but it obviously bears worth repeating that, Danny and The Rock have a much bigger vision, right, for the XFL and programming and year round, and maybe that's too big, right? Maybe people just want 12 weeks of spring football or 10 weeks, whatever the USFL. That's really hard to say. USFL is going to do, but do you get what I'm saying? Where it seems like USFL is going to be a little bit more like grounded, just football. More football, right? And do you have a preference? Do you care? What do you think?
I don't really have a preference because in the end, I'm going to be most enticed by the on-field product. So football will be football to me. But I do think that the type of ramp up that the XFL is looking for would be extremely beneficial in the long run, just because of all the people they're connected to and the brands you can get involved, and just the way that they have the power they have to spread the word is unmatched, honestly.
Yeah, it's just hard. It's one of those, like, do we want it now, or do I want to eat my candy now, right? And like, I'm happy, or do I want, and that is kind of what I feel like this is. And I'm, obviously we're kind of processing this real time. It came out, I tweeted, I said, this is proof that Brian Woods listens to the Markcast, because he, courteously posted this knowing that we were going to record early today. But, that's kind of what I'm analyzing real time, is like, this is the shot in the arm. Like, we're going next year, it's football. Whereas the XFL, it's not as sexy. It's a 2-year-long build, right? But maybe that's going to last a lot longer. We don't know. But I do think that we are looking at like whatever happens with the USFL now will be like what would have happened if the XFL would have gone forward. It is kind of like we're seeing that without actually living through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true. I didn't think about it like that, but I agree 100%.
So this is interesting. I'm going to play this from Twitter. So this is from Fox Sports, and then USFL. They already have their Twitter up. It's like USFL official. But Fox Sports put this out. Interesting. Doug Flutie was the one, and we're going to talk, because you sent this over to me. But Doug Flutie was the one that kind of helped do the announcement of this. So let's play this 40-second clip.
The USFL is back. See you in 2022. It's football. It is real football. It's pro football at the highest level. It's just being played in the spring. When I go back to our days of the USFL, that's what it was. We had Reggie White, we had Jim Kelly, we had Steve Young, we had Herschel Walker. We had name after name. We had 15 guys that played in the USFL that played in the NFL Pro Bowl the following year. And the talent level is out there. It is an alternative for some players rather than going to the NFL, and it's an opportunity for other players.
So that's interesting. Obviously Doug Flutie with the USFL, with the CFL, right, with the NFL too. You had pointed out, and we had an email from one of our listeners already to talk about this week from Daniel. I deleted where the name came from. One of our listeners, Daniel, I believe, had tweeted in that they got picked up. That we had talked that the Maximum Football Game, the Doug Flutie CFL PlayStation, I think 2 or 3 kind of digital game. They went bankrupt. We talked all about that, and they're getting picked up. And that there's already has a buyer for the IP. So you had what you tweeted. What was your thoughts?
Well, initially, before the stuff that came out this morning, we were kind of thinking, oh, well, maybe the XFL bought it. They kind of had a hand in, or there was actually leaks that came out that the Maximum Football was working on an XFL skin of their game. So that was just kind of the immediate connection to make. But then the stuff comes out this morning, and well, it's Doug Flutie's Maximum Football. So maybe the IP ended up in the hands of the USFL and the Spring League. Fox.
Yeah, I think, Brian, this is tremendous. Also, yes, worth noting, USFL going to be on Fox. So someone tweeted like, I think that's going to be harder for the XFL to get a Fox deal. No, they're not getting a Fox deal.
Yeah.
If USFL is on Fox, they're not getting a Fox deal. Obviously, you can do ESPN, ABC with Disney, or you can do Fox, but yeah, that means that I was like, no, it's not going to be harder. It's going to be impossible. They're not going to do that. There's no way. If Fox has a minority ownership in this league, but it's cool. Hey, so now, I mean, we can say on the Markcast, we had a football owner on the podcast. Brian Woods was on a couple weeks ago. I mean, we didn't know at the time, but it's exciting. Any other thoughts on this before we get into Edmonton stuff? I have some notes later for Spring League for this year, but any other wide-ranging thoughts about this?
Not too much aside from when Doug Flutie made that announcement, I didn't realize how many superstars played in the old USFL. That was news to me, but that's awesome.
Yeah, I don't have the passion there. I know Josh Davis already, Seth, our listeners, some of the older generation, I don't know how that plays, right? I don't know how okay, we're resurrecting this league. It played in 83 to 85 or whatever. I don't know. Again, what are the pros and cons? Does anyone give a crap about the old? I don't know. The trademarks, that's interesting to me. I mean, I know it doesn't cost a lot, right? But we've talked before. Is the XFL, even though they only spent, $28 million or whatever with the debt, was that worth having the Seattle Dragons? I had an article, and we probably won't get into it now, but 538, they do, they're a sports whatever blog. They did this whole article about how difficult it is naming teams and dealing with the branding and dealing with the logos and what all that stuff. And so, I mean, maybe it is worth not having to do that R&D. I mean, the Edmonton Elks, spent 10 months, right, trying to figure out the name. So I don't know. I think it's interesting, but I do feel really not great for the XFL, and I feel better about us branding away from the XFL, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I think well, at this point, too, there's so many potential options coming in the next couple of years for people between, you got the Spring League hub, the USFL, which, yes, is very difficult to say.
Yeah, it is.
The XFL. FCF, yeah. And who knows, maybe more will pop up. So, I mean, at least we're getting opportunities for people. That's definitely a good thing out of it.
Yeah, it is. And this is better. And I will say, Brian Scott, friend of the show with the Spring League, we were talking a couple weeks ago during one of the games, and he was like, wait, the XFL isn't coming back next year? And I'm like, no, where have you been? And he's like, I can't wait till 2023, right? Because you have these guys, right? Like we've talked with Matt Mango a lot. I got a note here I got to talk to before we move on, but you have these guys like you're in the peak of your career now, right? And so USFL is going to get a crap ton of talent that is not waiting for the XFL. And so, I mean, for Brian Woods, like I think this is really smart. I mean, again, it's just that difference between building this league for culture or building it to play. But I think people just want to see football. So
yeah, the people that really do want football will be there regardless of how well advertised it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean that proves that with the spring league, we get 500,000 people just happenstance tuning in. But no, I mean spring league, I think has been a success. Obviously, Fox has been happy with the results. I mean, clearly to go head forward with this. So we can nitpick 98,000 viewers on the Thursday versus 68 or whatever. But one note before we get into the CFL stuff, Matt Mangle, friend of the show, he's got a couple of, and I told him I would plug this on the show. When he was a kicker in the spring league, last year when the XFL was working with the spring league to develop the rules, Matt got a bunch of these prototype balls to kick because they were like testing the kickoffs and all the different rules and stuff. And so Matt is selling these balls. You can buy them. He'll sign them. Tweet at him, Matt Mangle. I think he had 3. He sold one to XFL Gym, of course. XFL Gym, got on that. He offered them to me. I just said, I'm never going to do justice with that, right? I'm like I'm the hangy stuff guy. Do you have any interest in the Matt Mangle signed football from the prototype league?
I mean, it's cool. I just don't know if I personally would want it, but I definitely get why people would. It is cool. If I had like some extra money to throw at it, maybe, but right now, not so much.
Yeah, Josh Davis was like, I might need to mortgage my Josh Davis was all over this. So anyway, but I told Matt I would do that. I bought one of his jerseys. I should be here. I thought I was going to be here today. We're going to unbox next week on the show. Lead story. Now, all that preface out of the way with the USFL, and Matt's like looking at the Google Doc. We're going to get through all this stuff. What was your reaction to the Edmonton Elks, the whole thing on, I guess, Tuesday?
I think they nailed it. Like everything from how they presented it to the logos themselves and the rebrand and like the helmets look awesome. I just think everything looks awesome. It seems like we've been kind of criticizing the CFL's social media presence for a while, and then all of a sudden it just like turned up that day, kind of across the board for the whole league. I haven't been paying too much attention if they're still on stuff, but it's also the first like positive news they've had in a long time as a league. So, but yeah, no, I think they nailed it.
Yeah, it's and so we'll get through. I have a couple notes here, and then we'll toss. I sat down with, like I said, with Dave Campbell about this. That's what I said. I'm like, it is so great to have some positivity come out. It's just been like a crap storm for months. I feel like with the CFL, there's been nothing positive. Arash is yelling at team owners. We've got we're talking is health updates, all this stuff. It was so cool. I think it looks great. I have my Edmonton hat on and my flag. I, of course, ordered a hat immediately. Dave Campbell already has a hat because, he's cool like that. But I think it's great. I think the logo looks sick. I think they should have called it the Elk, though. I think the S. I understand. If you have to quote Webster's dictionary and say we talked to linguistic experts about all this, you've already lost your battle. What do you think about the S debate?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't really see why it's necessary. Like, I get that both the Elk and Elks are correct, but yeah, I just don't really see why it's necessary, because they also filed an entirely separate trademark for that like months after they had their list narrowed down. So it definitely, that adding the S definitely came late in their whole process.
I had a tweet here from Jason Greger. He was on a couple weeks ago, a friend of the show. He said, according to the team president, Elks, Eagles, and Elkhounds were the top 3. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, so I guess Elk wasn't even in there, right? It was Elks, because Elk was like when they listed the top 7, it was like Elk, Elks, right? And then Elkhounds, Eagles, Evergreens, right? But there was
I think there was like Evergolds or something like that too.
So one no, I just to be remiss to talk about this. Edmonton, there was a whole horrific thing this week with the remains of the children being found outside of the Indigenous residential school. I did see a lot of fans. Obviously, Edmonton didn't want to do the announcement when they did their general meeting a couple weeks ago because they announced that they lost like $7 million and all of that. But some people did think that like that's very much prominently in the news right now is this discovery of these remains of these 215 children. And so obviously we're not like a Debbie Downer podcast, but I do want to like, condolences. I mean, it's horrific and they're going to want to do more research. I saw CFL Reddit, Braden's a friend of ours. There's all these other schools from the past that they want to go back and look at, but basically, just horrific, but they did. That was some feedback I did see was like, well, maybe we should have waited a little bit about that. But I think they did their best. Dave tweeted out, Dave Campbell, when he was at the event that the CEO Chris Presson and President, he's optimistic for the August 5th date. He says they've had written and verbal approvals all come in from the provinces and protocols for fans in stadiums will be submitted jointly. So any other thoughts about them feeling confident? How do you feel about the CFL season?
As long as everything stays on track with their reopening plan, I think they can definitely do it. It's going to be cutting it real close, though, because I believe they said they're going to be in each step for 21 days at least. And they're going to be monitoring things the whole time. So if something takes a turn for the worst, you're likely going to extend past that 21 days. But if things stay on track, I don't see why they can't.
It reminds me, and I know you just moved up here to Washington, it really reminds me of last year when we did the whole, because I'm in the wedding industry, and so we covered a lot of these guidelines and stuff, and how many people could be at weddings, and what were the rules. And it was the same thing. The Inslee, our governor, would come out and say, like, this step is at least 3 weeks, or at least a month, or whatever. And everyone would come out and go, okay, so 21 days, 21 days. It's like, it's at least that. Like it's at least that, and it's no less, could be more. So I mean, it is something just to think about in that regard. But obviously, Edmonton, they wouldn't. I don't think they would do all this if they didn't feel good about it, right? Yeah. And they at least want to be on the forefront of that. One other no, just a lot of people are upset about the Edmonton Eskimos thing. Dave talks about this, like stuck in the past, wanting to be upset about everything. Dave is kind of, I think like a lot of people like get over it, move on. The record books are the same. We deal with it here with the Redskins, right? Cleveland Indians. I mean, it's a lot of these things. Any other thoughts about like kind of that nostalgia kind of taking over maybe too much?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. You like the team that you've been rooting for your whole life, but it's something you got to kind of get over. Like when it's collectively decided by like a large group of people that you're offending them, you kind of got to take some steps to not do that anymore.
Yeah. And, and we have quotes, from the president, they always meant it to be, empowering and the symbol of, resilience and all these things. I understand all that, but, I think it was a good move. They said, Chris Preston said they had the name and logo since February. The toughest thing was making sure it all remained secret. And, that's good. I mean, I kind of heard it. I mean, I kind of heard Elks too, but, whatever, we didn't know about it. So we're going to take a break here, toss to the interview with Dave. Dave was making the rounds. He was on Rod Peterson. He was on CF Perspective, and I got him for about 10 minutes. So we will go check in with Dave, and then we'll be back to go through some more of the CFL stuff. Well, I don't want to waste too much of your time. Busy man, I'm sure your socials yesterday were going crazy. What has been like the last 24 hours?
I think it's been a whirlwind of reaction, honestly. I think overall it's been positive. I think the presentation, the way the logo looks, the way it looks on the helmet, the way that some of the merchandise that was presented yesterday, I think overall it's positive. Some people don't like the name Elks, but that's the hardest thing right now is what name is appropriate, right? What name will excite people? I don't think the name itself really excites people if you just say Elks, but when you look at what they're able to do with it, the power of marketing, the power of the brand, what you can do with the logo. I think it's really tremendous. And then sadly, there's some that are still mad that the name Eskimos was discontinued 10 months ago and will never live it down. And I think those people are going to be left behind, to be brutally honest with you. I think to scale this up, there's so much potential for this name. So yeah, I think overall it's positive. I won't say it's a hit yet, but I think it does have a potential to be a hit. But I do think it's been positive.
Yeah, I see. So you have one of the new hats. You were lucky enough to get that.
Right there.
I immediately went on yesterday.
There's a logo too. There it is too. There's one of the stickers. So
yeah, I immediately went on and ordered my hat, and I got a shirt too, because the shipping, from Canada is just astounding. So I had to bulk order to get it down. But I'm serious. I went on. I just added my flag however I do it. So we're building it out here. We're supporting the team. But no, it looks great, right? It looks modern. It looks polished. I think all of the merchandise looks phenomenal. As someone that studies, I just bought this dumb, Fitzmagic shirt. I mean, I'm a big fan of this stuff. So what has been the reaction from fans, listeners of yours, people that write to you over the last day?
Yeah, I think overall it's been positive. I think there is some excitement there. I think there was a lot of people like myself that didn't really know when the day came of we're changing the name and here's the new name, of how that would go over. I was even myself thinking, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this, because 10 months ago was a very emotional time for a lot of people, myself included, because I'd grown attached to the old name. You understand why it had to go and why we're at this point. And then you get to the day of the unveiling and you're like, okay. And this happened rather fast, right? So as far as the announcement to when it got put together until the unveiling. And then when you see it, it just invigorates you, right? It was amazing. So I think positive, it's been positive overall. I think I see so much marketing potential. I mean, my 5-year-old son, who has been to a few games, kept saying this morning, the Edmonton Elks, the Edmonton Elks. He wouldn't stop saying it. And I'm thinking that's cool. And I think that's what the organization wants, is they want that younger crowd. They want newer fans. They want fans that in 20 years from now are going to love the name. And the name, there's no problem with the name Elks at all. It is grammatically correct and proper. It was checked by Oxford Dictionary, because the organization checked with Oxford Dictionary and checked with a linguistics expert here at the University of Alberta. They said both grammatically correct and proper. Yes, it's a little weird, but you know what? We can get around it. There are rock songs that have weird lines and we don't care, right? And they're not grammatically correct, but we don't care, right? Lines in movies, TV shows, that sort of thing. So, there's some people that just think, Elks is a dumb name. But I would say to those people too, that if the team was called the Edmonton Elks, they would not be called the Edmonton Eskimos, right? So, I mean, what's in a name really? It is a name. But I think it's what you can do with the name that I think this is why it's a big win and a hit out of the ballpark, in my opinion. This has so much marketing potential and power.
Yeah, that's what I love too, is all this, we had you on before, all this XFL stuff, the CFL delay, all this, it's just been so uncertain and negative and everyone arguing. And I mean, it just seemed so joyous yesterday that everybody was so excited. I thought the presentation looked great. I thought the announcement video was great. How much heads up did you guys know about the June 1st date?
So I knew the day before. It was kept under wraps until, I believe, 2 hours before the announcement was when the Elks, when they were not the Elks then, said that we're going to have a significant announcement. We all knew that was going to be what was happening, is the name change. So I knew the day before. What's amazing too is in this social media age, I mean, this name was picked 3 months ago in early February. My broadcast partner, Morley Scott, knew and did a great job of not saying anything. The people, you have to sign non-disclosure agreements, obviously, but still, that doesn't mean that people have loose lips or loose fingers, right? In this day and age. And to me, that speaks to the power and the respect the brand has. So yeah, I knew just the day before. And when I originally my original raw reaction was, oh gosh, like I got really nervous about it. First of all, I got nervous because it was my first public event in well over a year. And secondly, it's just like, oh my gosh, it's happening. But and yeah, I had to keep it quiet. It was hard to keep it quiet for the amount of time that I had to. I didn't have to wait 3 months. So it was a really quick announcement. And I think that was a really smart thing to do, is just, we're going to announce it next week. Like, no, just here it is. Boom. Edmonton Elks.
Well, and I think a lot of people expected, or hoped when you'd have the general meeting last month that maybe it would come out then, or they would announce it. But I think this was smart with some of the money losses and things that they talked about during that, to like, this is a totally separate positive event. Do you agree with that timing?
I do. I mean, I don't think the organization wanted to do it over Zoom, over an online event. I think they wanted more of a public event. Now, there was limited participation, obviously, and who was actually at Commonwealth Stadium. But I think they wanted that that feel of, you're there and you kind of see that logo. By the way, that's the biggest logo on a football field I've ever seen, and that's staying. I mean, that's a 65-yard logo. That's amazing. But just to be there in the stadium, to feel the electricity and the vibe, and yes, it was obviously streamed online as well, the video, which you can play over and over again, and I don't know why you wouldn't. It's a tremendous video. But I think they wanted to have, and I think that was a part of the delay as well. And it was, let's pick a time that's appropriate to have some small gathering. And I think that did the name unveiling more justice than doing it online. I think it's a good sign, too, that we're going to have a season coming up here. What is it today? June 2nd. So July 10th is the proposed, even though it's not official, it's the likely date to start camp, maybe a little bit later. I think that's another positive sign that we're moving in the right direction for a season.
Yeah, tremendously positive. It really felt like full steam ahead. And then also just so smart to have the shop ready to go and the merch there for, people to take photos of and to be able to sell out. I mean, we cover all these leagues and I even know some of the, we've had listeners and said, the CFL with the merchandise or with the marketing and whatever, like spot on the whole way around. It looks great. Everything went, I heard the website crashed because there was so much traffic, right? Which is tremendous. Finally, I don't want to hold you too long. I know you have all your stuff today. The event itself. So who all was there? What was that like? Because I know that we saw the announcement video, right? The YouTube stream. What else was going on there day of?
So there was I would say a fair bit of media there. Morley and myself were there. There was TV stations there. Some couple papers were there too. Board of directors were there. Some alumni were there as well. And I didn't really get to see everybody. It wasn't a huge gathering. I would say there was maybe 20, 30 people in all. It was a very safe event. I felt safe. It was good. When you came in, you had to get checked and sign a form and things like that. So, it was really neat to be around people again, honestly, because I've been holed up at home here for a long time, like a lot of people have. So it was really cool to kind of just be in that mix and kind of see people that I haven't seen, honestly, for almost 15, 16 months. So it was a pretty cool event. It was nice to be in the stadium again. I mean, that's often my second home during the football season. So that was exciting as well. So really well done event, small in number, but it was really good. It was really nice to see something in public again.
Finally, just obviously from talking with the people you saw yesterday and everything, overall positive feelings, right? Like you said, moving towards the season. I mean, everyone feels like it seems like the numbers are good. Any last thoughts on that? Just about general kind of place and time where we're at before we let you go?
I think the key thing is you said it right there, Reid, is that the numbers are good. Numbers are getting better. I know Manitoba's still going through a rough time. So I'm hoping, and everyone's hoping, it's going to get better there soon. I think it will, because our vaccine rollout, compared to when I talked to you in March, like our vaccine rollout has been tremendous. So we are close to 60% vaccinated, single dose. Smaller with the double vaccinations, but or the full vaccinations, but we just announced yesterday here in Alberta and other provinces has as well that we're accelerating that process. I mean, personally, I can go get my second dose in 2 weeks, so that's great. Chris Presson, the Edmonton Elks president and CEO, said yesterday that the return to play plan for just playing on the field, getting back on the field, has been approved both in writing and verbally from all provinces. The return to play plan for fans will all be submitted jointly from all 9 teams. But I think, what we saw in Montreal with the Montreal Canadiens game in Game 6 against the Leafs, 2,500. You saw 550 in the stands for Game 7 at the Leafs home game. Tonight in Winnipeg, they'll have 500 fans there. So I think when you're seeing the ball rolling here, if you can get, even if it's a small amount of fans in an indoor facility, we've seen that doctors have said outside transmission is 20 times less of a risk compared to indoor, risk of indoor transmission compared to outdoor. I can't see why we can't get socially distanced fans. And, here in Alberta, restrictions could be gone in a month if the numbers trend the right way. They could be gone in Saskatchewan. And I think everywhere else, the Ontario teams probably will have to wait a bit before they can get inside their own stadiums. Same with the BC Lions. I think the Alouettes will be fine in Montreal, but I think we're trending the right way for a season. There's still that little seed of doubt in the back of your mind because you're like, okay, could this fall apart? Of course it could. But so far, so good. The numbers are going in the right direction. The approvals are going in the right direction. I think we're going to have a season starting on August 5th.
I'm watching the clock here. Last question. I saw you going back and forth with a friend of the show, Josh Davis, on Twitter about them keeping the double E logo for like alternate jersey uniforms, right? We're not losing that altogether, right?
No, we're not. I mean, the antlers will be the primary logo now, or this logo here. That's the primary mark. The double E logo is not going away. Likely will be on the helmet for a third jersey setup. Now, we haven't seen the jerseys yet, so there will be some alterations there. Colors are staying, and my guess is that I'm led to believe that the double E logo will be somewhere on the jersey. So it is not going away. I know that was a big worry for fans, a big worry for myself too, but the double E logo will stay.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I know you got a busy day. I appreciate you hopping on. I said I wanted to pre-book you when this day came, and you're a man of your word. I couldn't be more thankful for you taking the time to come on.
Yeah, thank you, Reid, and thank you to you and Paul for this podcast and just for your support of the CFL. And I think in the future we're going to be speaking a lot, so that very much excites me.
I'm excited.
So thank you very much.
I've got my Edmonton cave going here, so we are in solidarity as my team. So we're going for it. I appreciate it.
Right on. Take care, Reid.
Thanks. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate Dave coming on. I had pre-booked Dave weeks ago. I tweeted at him. I said, Dave, can I pre-book you for the week that the Edmonton, could be any time, and he goes, you got it, brother. And so he came on, man of his word. He was making all the rounds yesterday. So really appreciate that. We got some notes here about the current CFL season. There was a big interview with the Montreal Alouettes president, Mario Cecchini, talking about how they're not going to have any preseason games. Any thoughts on that? I guess that's something we don't think about, and then it's like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, like you said, it makes sense. I mean, if you're going to be running right up to the start date of the league with the reopening plan, then you can't really do preseason games, especially because I feel like at that point you'd still probably want fans in the stands. So at that point, you're just throwing money away.
That's actually a good point, right? Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. Like, how are we going to do? Sorry, I'm burping here with my coffee. How are we going to do preseason? With no fans, right? Like, let's go check it out. Are we going to be so hungry for that? It is interesting. The NFL last year had all the issues week 2 and 3 with injuries. Mm-hmm. Obviously this year with their 18-game season, right? Didn't they cut down? Is it 2 weeks of preseason now? What's the NFL doing now?
I believe it's 3 weeks of preseason and then one extra game on the regular season.
So, I mean, I again, it's one of those like, oh, that makes sense. Like we didn't think about it, but like you said, even just monetarily, like we're not going to be having fans in for preseason games, but like time wise too. It'll be curious to see injury wise, kind of how that shakes out. I have a note here from Solomon Elimiman. Can never say that. The Players Association president, I guess they're all going through like COVID protocol meetings. A lot of the team leaders are, a lot of the players are. And he was saying they sent this last Friday on the 28th to allow you to get your affairs in order and prepare for football. You'll have to attend you will have attended the team informational session over the past couple weeks. Your whatever people, your reps and stuff are all going to be a part of that. Just interesting. I mean, these are all things that like we talk about transparency, like that's coming out from the Players Association, which I guess is kind of the CFL. But again, like these are things that I feel like the CFL could be talking about. Like we're running our players through this. We're talking, here's screenshots from Zoom meetings. Do you get what I'm saying? What do you?
Yeah, they could up their social media presence very easily by just making announcements about all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like scouring like, the freaking Montreal Gazette or whatever, like trying to find these stories. I mean, it's not, again, they kicked it out of the park this week with the Edmonton Elks thing, but that's like it's like one thing. There was the debate last night about the CFL media presence, and I pointed out that the XFL has like 120,000 more followers than the CFL does, but we're not. On Twitter, but like no one's keeping track. And the feedback was, well, the CFL, we have, smaller population. That's always the thing. I follow the CFL. I live in Seattle. You follow the CFL. You live in W. So I don't want to hear about, a geographic demographic, geographical lines, determining why the CFL has less followers.
Yeah. Anyone can get on Twitter.
Braden, Twitter is worldwide. Okay. I don't want the numbers population doesn't always work. Doesn't always work out for all this other stuff. You see this update from Josh Davis. Are you looking at the Google Doc, or I can read through it?
Yeah.
So we know who this player is. We won't say who this player is, but Josh Davis got some information from one of the CFL players. You want to run through that?
Yeah, there was one player self-quarantined for a week prior to a flight. There's also an app that tracks players, and players are reporting on 7/2 to quarantine for another week. And then camps will start on the 10th of July. Yeah.
So, and then, the BC Lions are going to, we talked last week, they're going to report on the 2nd quarantine, and then camp starts on the 16th. So it's interesting. I mean, appreciate Josh, pushing that out and the players. But yeah, so apparently we're going to self-quarantine for a week, fly up there, quarantine for another week, which I guess makes sense. We talk a lot, if these players are vaccinated already heading up, you got to kind of wonder, if we reduce that. But I guess that's fine if you kind of split it and do 1 and 1. Get going there. We're getting close. I mean, we're going to find it's kind of crap or get off the toilet. We're getting, it's really getting close here. Saskatchewan government, they're saying it's premature to speculate on the number of fans. And this is one of those things like the Premier Scott Moe comes out, he presents the steps, and then you have, like we talked, you have all, well, that means in 21 days we're going to have, it's like, no, this is the plan, and it's fine. They got a roadmap. We talked about it's a 3-step plan based on 70% of the vaccinations, but they are working on it. The number of fans in the stands will depend on the number of factors. It would be premature to speculate on what that might look like in August. Any other thoughts you haven't shared on kind of this part already? I know we kind of hit part of that with the Edmonton talk.
Not much besides it just makes sense. Like what we were saying, there's too many factors that are still to be determined to figure out just how full stadiums can be. If everything goes according to plan, then great, but you got to really bank on that.
And this is where we get to it. It's like immediately the Saskatchewan Warfighters come out. We're thrilled to hear from the Premier that we'll be able to welcome fans back to Mosaic Stadium without capacity receptions. 1 step 3 is achieved. So it's like, again, like that's fine. I mean, we're working towards it, but it's like cart before the horse here stuff. Like we need to get through some of the stuff. Ontario, that we've talked about Lisa McLeod in the past, she is going to be monitoring. They did the 550 fully vaccinated people for Game 7 on Monday. And so she says they're going to kind of monitor that over the next couple of weeks. Arash was really not happy about that. I saw a really angry tweet from Arash talking about like, well, they're vaccinated and like, is that like a real good sample size? I don't know. I mean, Do you have any other thoughts on that with the Game 7 and the 550?
I get what Arash was saying. Like, why are you monitoring people that are fully vaccinated rather than people that aren't? But I mean, at the same time, you want to make sure the vaccines are working. So, I mean, maybe you don't have to make it as big of a deal as it seems to be, but I don't think it's a bad idea.
It's just it's a small sample size. It's the first fans in the stands in the province in over 443 days since the onset. I mean, I would rather be safe than sorry, but it seemed like Arash was like really angry about that. I thought that was interesting. So this is the next kind of big thing I want to talk about, and then we're going to toss to one of our interviews here coming up with Tom. This big article came out last Friday from Nick Solsky, who I believe is going to be on the show on the 17th. I think we're trying to schedule that or record on whatever that week of that is. But in a couple weeks, Nick's going to come on. Nick is a former gaming executive, and he was on Ottawa TSN 1200, and he was talking about how legalized sports betting is, obviously on the cusp, and now it's going to be this game changer in the world, guaranteed life for the CFL. Before I go into my rant, any thoughts you have about sports betting, single game sports betting?
Yeah, I don't know about guaranteed life. Might be some help, but I don't know about guaranteed life.
We quoted Donk and Hodge last week where they said, well, this is great because the money that we lose, we're going to make up with the 20, we lose 20 million a year on a good year, 10 to 20 million. We're going to make 20 million with the sports betting. So this is great. And it's all profit. And I'm like, yeah, but if the best case scenario is just balancing the books, what my thing about this is, this is my big quote. Not to bring it to the simplest point possible, but if we want to save one of the greatest identifiable Canadian institutions, the Canadian Football League, this is literally the easiest way to do it. And to me, and I was talking a lot with some of the moderators on the CFL board, or boards, whatever, on Facebook, like the mentality behind this is that we can fix our business model without actually changing anything. Is what I don't like, right? Like, I don't like people that criticize the XFL, that whole thing as being, this Hail Mary and all that. To me, I get that this is more long-term. Okay, we can add gambling for 20 years or whatever, but do you get what I'm saying there? What are your thoughts on kind of that fixing but not actually changing anything?
I mean, I do think that the sports betting helps a little bit. I mean, at least you're breaking even, but the goal isn't to break even. The goal is to become profitable. And that's not going to happen if you're just breaking even. So you're definitely going to have to change some more stuff along the way. It's not a bad idea. It's definitely going to help, but you're going to have to do a few more things probably to make your league a bit more sustainable. And,
and I don't, again, I'm not trying to poo-poo on anything, right? I mean, if this is going to solve whatever, that's great. Like I said, Nick's going to come on and we're going to talk to Tom today. I mean, I want to be proven wrong from this. I see a lot of, it would be cool. That was our big thing last week. Like, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And what if we did that? And just, this like fixing anything. I just don't like fixing your car without actually we're going to put some tape on the engine and keep going down the road. And you're like, well, we need to, we actually might need to get some stuff going. So there's a couple of these. So the bill is in the Senate right now. And so they had, it was studied last night as of Wednesday by the Senate Committee on Banking, Trade, and Commerce this week. And so there was a couple key quotes that I got. It's going to be read again on this Friday. And then there's going to be a third meeting next week on Wednesday. A couple of key quotes that came out last night that I pulled from CFL News. Randy Ambrosie, this is a quote, says the league will turn to experts to help the CFL understand how to reach this new, younger, more diverse fan base. So I had two takeaways from that. Do you have any takeaways from that very interesting quote before I give my rant?
I'm just curious who the experts are.
Well, I'm curious about that. Also, Arash took the words out of my mouth. Again, I don't want to, we talk about Arash on the show, but he's bringing good content. He goes, The tweet was, "You're just asking the experts now." Like,
honestly,
how long have we been taught, that they're trying to fast track? And what I've kind of gathered, I'm not, a scholar on Canadian politics, but I think it's like a lot of the current people that are in office are trying to get this through because there's new elections coming up. So if they don't, and Dan Ralph was talking about this, friend of the show, that there are many more government bills before the Senate. So if this isn't passed by the time both the Senate and House leave for the summer later this month, it's not going to happen because they're going to go to the polls. So they're really trying to fast track this.
And if that happens, they have to start the entire process over again.
Yeah, right. And I don't, there was I had a thing on here that, Dunk thinks that if they get this done, they'll be ready to take wagers by September.
That's good luck. I mean, hopefully that's a thing because you're trying to make money for this year. But I think Arizona legalized sports gambling at the end of last year, and they're targeting making it you're actually able to bet on the day of NFL kickoff this year. Yeah. So it takes a while. I don't see us starting the CFL season in COVID, with all these things, also passing the House betting and getting that all going by September. I mean, God bless them. Oh, the other thing was when Ambrosie was talking about turning to the experts. I'm like, wait, so you mean that people that own a league and run a league can outsource and bring in other experts to help them? Because that was the criticism with the XFL, right? Is well, The Rock has never run a football league. Well, Randy Ambrosie has never commissioned a league that allows sports betting before, but that doesn't mean that we don't. You can bring in experts. I would have brought them in before now. But yeah, they said that they fear a delay with this bill could kill it. And it could be lost. Like you said, it all kind of goes back to nothing after that, right? They got to kind of start from scratch. Yeah.
So we're going to toss to Tom. Tom's going to be joining us here. I got a lot of questions about that. Again, I want to be schooled on this. I'm happy to be, proven wrong. We're going to toss to Tom, and then we're going to come back. We've got some more Farhan notes about kind of the CFL, some more notes about XFL stuff, and then obviously we got our big Paul interview coming up too. So stay tuned. Well, we have Tom Mayenknecht here. I studied many media appearances of you because I wanted to make sure that I said that correctly. How did I do with that introduction?
You did as well as the Edmonton Elks did this week from a branding point of view. Pretty well the best that you can do. Maybe I'll have to hire you as my agent so you can talk to a lot of other people, make sure that they get the pronunciation right. But my late parents, Hans and Gretel Mayenknecht, would really appreciate the way you pronounced it.
Because I did. We correspond on Twitter, and it's hard. It was like when we had AJ Jaku back on, and I was really trying hard. I want to say this right. So Tom's here with the Sport Market. Thank you so much for coming on. We have a lot of excitement going on today. We have the USFL kind of breaking news that kind of destroyed the show that I have built already. I know you want to talk about the Edmonton Elks, and then obviously we're going to talk about the C-218 bill. Where do you want to start? What do you find most fascinating today?
I'm ready to go wherever you want to go, but I do think the breaking news that you talked about, Reid, first of all, it's right up the alley of the Markcast, and it's right, in this zone of unprecedented, what do we call it, daydreaming or visioning about what football can be and who is number two behind the NFL. I think the USFL news today is probably as good a place to start as any, because it continues a period of the last 2 or 3 years whereby there's a real movement among investors, among football types, among promoters to create, whether it's a spring league or another league, to create an answer, another way to fill the insatiable American appetite. And when I say American, I mean, obviously Canadians, we have an appetite for all things CFL, and the NFL is growing in a really big way. But from an American point of view, make no mistake, when you add all the other sports together, you pretty well don't have anything that can match the fan base that is intrinsically in the DNA of Americans for both professional football and college football. It's a massive 1-2 punch. And so this USFL news is really fascinating for a number of reasons. One is, hey, Isn't the XFL already there trying to map out some kind of partnership with the CFL to make it strong enough that it is second only to the NFL? Isn't that what the plan is there? Isn't, you know, what the Alliance tried to do a couple of years ago, isn't that been there, done that? Well, apparently not, because here you've got this beast of the 80s coming back online, the USFL, which of course was Donald Trump's first exposure to football ownership with the New Jersey Generals, and of course Doug Flutie, who is known to so many of your viewers and your followers for what he did in both the CFL and the NFL, is, you know, 100% behind this new USFL bid. The second reason why it's so fascinating, guys, is Fox. From day one, Fox is saying, we're here with you. And if I'm Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Redbird and the CFL and anybody associated with the XFL, I have to admit I'm taken aback today, because if I'm choosing for the XFL brand the perfect TV partner, I'm choosing Fox. You know, they're just a little bit ahead of the game. Their graphics are younger, all that kind of stuff. Well, obviously, the discussions have gone on with the people backing the USFL concept, and this is the result. So I think it is really big news. Who knows where it goes? No matter what, whether you have Fox or any of the other major CBS, NBC, ABC/ESPN, whoever you have involved, building a second league, again, whether it's spring or something else, is not an easy thing to do. They're off to a good start, in my opinion, though. If this is a hypothetical league that wants to get back, not being here since the 1980s, they're making it at least interesting coming out of the gates with Fox, in my view.
I have two follow-ups. I don't know which one I want to hit first. You know, there's been all this talk about, you know, the XFL, the baggage, the twice failed league, all this kind of stuff. Well, here we have the USFL. You know, similar baggage. You know, I mean, what are your thoughts on that, as opposed to just like Brian? We kind of thought Brian would just be like, okay, the spring league is now a league. I mean, Brian Woods has been on our show, right? I mean, we know about his mentality of building this. What do you think about that?
Well, you know what? I think, you know, Reid, your words are well taken. Just because you say that there's so much football appetite doesn't mean you can deliver on that in a sustainable way. You know, it's interesting. I think that some of the leagues would be better off trying to first negotiate a feeder type relationship to the NFL, so that they're a developmental league, so that they have that kind of relationship. They have that higher sense of purpose. I know that that's an ego thing. Nobody wants to be seen as a farm league kind of thing. But when you look at how big the National Football League has become, especially the growth during this pandemic, like, make no mistake, guys, the NFL has grown during the pandemic. It did take a hit of about $4 billion, but very soon the trajectory is going to be $19 billion industry, and they're well on their way to becoming the $25 billion industry that the commissioner and everybody associated with the Shield wants to have. So you've got this massive Godzilla that is the NFL. Anybody else would be well advised to being careful to not try to be NFL 2.0, but be something completely different. Be something that fills a new void, whether it's rule experimentation like the XFL did, when it tried to come back here. I think there's a lot of, how can I say, good ideas there, but they weren't given the shelf span. They weren't given the lifespan to really figure out. So, I mean, to me, if I'm the XFL and the CFL, I'm fast forwarding our discussions, and I'm trying to, again, do the right thing. You don't want to do the fast thing. You want to do the right thing. But I think they're so far down this road that both leagues have made the decision that they can benefit from having some kind of collaboration. And it's probably a much more integrated collaboration rather than a soft, we're best buddies kind of partnership. So all those XFL, CFL talks now, guys, are in the context of a USFL that has got Fox as a TV partner and, wants to bring back some of the heritage names of those mid-'80s, including the Generals and others. So again, I think they need to move fast, but they also need to move smartly, not bite off more that they can chew. The worst thing that can happen here, and it applies to the USFL as well, the worst thing that can happen is XFL and CFL form a partnership and it dies. And then both leagues are in jeopardy. Or the USFL comes on board and it lasts a year. It'll be really interesting to see the political reaction and response of the NFL to seeing these nascent leagues sort of nipping at their heels.
Yeah, that's what's interesting to me is, we have all this XFL, CFL, and, people getting upset, our listeners, what is The Rock even doing? What are they even doing? Now, we're basically, saying, okay, it's going to be 2023. Well, now USFL coming in 2022, is this just they're slipping in there and going for it?
Reid, it's the most important question of the day. To me, they're sending a statement by coming out of the gates in 2022. They're basically saying, we're going to be the spring league. We're going to be the number 2 league. And we're going to bring back a lot of fans who were entertained by, hey, you know what? Small names like Herschel Walker. The fact is they had a short run, but they had a good run in terms of, some of the talent that was attracted to that league, back in the day. So here they are saying that we're going to get this done for 2022. They're basically shortcutting or heading off the CFL and the XFL at the pass. To me, I'm surprised that the CFL and the XFL, given how long they've been talking, haven't sort of come up with more of a plan that, hey, this is where we're going to start, but we also reserve the right to possibly do this and this. It's still sort of, people speculating, right? People like us just sort of kicking the tires. We don't know exactly what it's going to be, except the one thing that stands out to me is that I think the CFL needs this a lot more than CFL purists would have thought a couple of months ago. And I think, not that you are able to hide financial capacity or lack of it, but I think the CFL has been, let's say, exposed in the sense that they do need to come together as one league, whether it's with the XFL or not. They've been operating in a number of ways like 3 leagues, right? The top tier, Saskatchewan Roughriders, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and the Edmonton Elks. Yeah, I'm catching up. I'm current. I'm up to date with the branding. Then you've got the 3 weak links, which just happen to be in the 3 largest markets of Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver. They've been trying to find an identity in those urban markets. Randy Ambrosie has been trying to say, hey, the way we do it is through CFL 2.0 and getting a little bit more international. And then you've got the CFL in the middle, right? The Ottawa Red Blacks, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and the Calgary Stampeders. I really think the CFL in the Board of Governors meetings has operated not as one league. They've operated sort of as 3 leagues and, trying to bring those respective interests to the table. Anyway, I digress, but by doing that and by going dark last year and by being, late this year, the CFL has shown that they can't afford to do anything of substance without fans in the stands. And so they're going to push back the schedule. And I'm really hoping that it does work. And Rod Black of TSN, he was on the Sport Market a couple of weeks ago, and he and I both agreed, you don't necessarily need to be August 5th if anything happens. But you have to be underway by Labor Day weekend. you have to be able to either come out of the gates the same time or the week before the National Football League does, which is the first Thursday after Labor Day weekend. And that has got, so many sort of urgent red flags around it. So again, I think the CFL can come out of this strong, but their vulnerabilities have been exposed. And the fact that not all the governors see the future the same way, that's got to be resolved, like one way or the other. People have to sign off on, this is our vision for, whether it's 3-down football or 4-down football, this is our vision for the CFL moving forward, and we're all in. I haven't got that sense that that's been the way the CFL has been these past few years.
So shifting gears a little bit, you mentioned the Edmonton's their new branding and everything. What are your thoughts on the new branding and the Elks and everything?
I think they've done a really good job. I mean, first of all, as I said, when the Eskimos name first came under pressure, that when it comes to any kind of indigenous usage or indigenous applications, it's not necessarily the name or the logo, it's how you use it, how much respect you show. And quite frankly, I think the Edmonton Eskimos were handled quite respectfully by the Edmonton organization over time. Having said that, there was enough of a movement to have them say, hey, you know what, we're going to get with the program, rebrand. And from that perspective, when I saw some of the other contenders, I was sort of thinking, guys, be careful here, because you've got a great tradition as one of the best organizations in the CFL. You've got a great brand story. Don't mess it up by coming up with something that just isn't going to live up to, the prestige of your organization all these years. And although it's new, I do think that they've done the right thing with the Edmonton Elks. And I say so simply because, I had a lot of fun in my 3 years in the NBA, and I learned so much from the NBA approach to branding, and became a real student when we came up with the whole Raptors name for Canada's first NBA franchise. We knew we were going against the grain, but we were following the NBA protocol of appealing to kids first, and then the theory being, if you're hip and cool with kids, you'll also be hip and cool with young thinking adults and even young thinking baby boomers. And that's what you see, right? When you see a Scotiabank Arena with an NBA crowd, it seems like so long ago now that we've seen that. You see that there's still a lot of millennials, but there's also baby boomers that are hipsters. Some of us are wannabe hipsters, but we're basically hipsters anyway. This Edmonton Elks follows that NBA path of appealing to kids first. And why do I say that? Look at the hottest selling jerseys in all the major professional sports leagues. They tend to be some form of animate subject, whether it's an animal or a group of people. And with kids, guys, there's nothing that is more interesting to kids than animals. And I think that they've done the right thing here by going with the Edmonton Elks. There's a regional Alberta, Northern Alberta, Canadian connection with the elk, no question there. And they can certainly have a lot of fun, as you've already seen, with the antlers, on the helmets and that kind of stuff. You're going to see, as much as they want to retain the double E as their primary mark, you're going to see a lot of merchandise with the Edmonton Elks. And I think that it's a pretty cool thing that they've done. It's quite a modern depiction of the elk. And so I give them credit for that. The reason why it makes so much sense is kids love the animals. You look at the Raptors as an example. You look at the Chicago Bulls, the Golden State Warriors. Most of the best-selling jerseys are named after animal nicknames or people nicknames. And even, names like the Los Angeles Lakers, as an example, that's still meant to be people who live by the lakes, because that franchise used to be in Minneapolis, back in the day. So I give the Edmonton organization full marks. I personally don't think that they were anywhere like the Washington Redskins or the Cleveland Indians or some of those others who really needed to change. But because they felt they should, I think they've come out of this in a real positive. And I also think it's a positive thing, guys. They wouldn't be making this announcement and starting to get the engine going if they didn't feel very confident about August/September 2021. And that's the best news of all, whether you're an Edmonton football fan or a CFL fan.
You mentioned that it's kind of known that all of the CFL is looking for a younger demographic at the moment. The Elks might have a little bit of a head start on that now, but how would you recommend like the rest of the league tries to catch up with that? Because you probably don't want everyone changing their names, and I don't think everyone needs to. But what other routes could you take to attract that younger demographic?
I think that, and the way you've mapped that out, Matt, in terms of options available, I don't think anybody else needs to change their name. But I do think that brand refreshes are in order. I'll give you an example. The BC Lions have essentially, for the most part, carried that similar mountain lion head in profile, and then the full-bodied, mountain lion before that, pretty well since they were formed, back in the 1950s. And I think that it's out of date. I think they can, come up with a new look. They tried a couple of years, 3 or 4 years ago, by having a derived sort of, claw on the helmets. But I do think that they can keep the original mountain lion as a heritage mark. But I think they've got to come up with something that it feels much more 2020 or 2030 than 1970s. And that's my impression when I look at the BC Lions logo. So it's not necessarily the name, it's just what you put behind the name. Mm-hmm. And that's where I'll go even further, Matt, is there's so many things that CFL teams can do from a marketing point of view to appeal to the younger demographic. Logo is one thing. The way you do your merchandising is another thing. But I think a lot of little things like what's your club policy towards tailgating? What new twists can you bring in that way? Ticketing policy. It's so frustrating for me to see, especially in the big urban markets, these organizations that have got real good people behind them, including the Toronto Argonauts, who've got access to the great minds at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, that they still haven't figured out the rule of first filling the building. Doesn't matter what you charge for your tickets, fill the building first. And then you're going to get more concession sales. And then when you're on TV, people are going to say, hey, full house, that's something that I might want to go to. There's nothing worse than national network television of a half-empty CFL stadium. So I think that one of the things that should be done, in answer to your question, Matt, is really revamp ticket pricing strategies. I'm really simple on this issue. If you're not filling your building, your tickets are too expensive. You're basically you've got a flawed pricing strategy. And I'm not saying discount to $20 tickets right across the board forever, but get more season ticket holders from the younger demographic. Make the CFL a place where you want to be on a Friday night. And that's the other thing that the CFL has to take the lead on. Why the NFL has been so successful is it builds all of its package on all the social stuff that comes out of any given Sunday. Right? 80%, 90% of the games are held on that one day. It becomes a big social experience, and we see what's happening. That's why it's the biggest sports betting platform. That's why it's the biggest fantasy platform. That's why it's the biggest television platform. That's why it's the biggest social media platform. The list goes on and on. It's a social movement built around a schedule. Now, the NFL, of course, is, obviously primarily Sunday. Then they've got the primetime Sunday Night Football, which is the new Monday Night Football. Then they have Monday night and they have Thursday night. So they've got basically, for the most part, they've got 3 dates that they focus on. One, they focus on minimum 80%. The CFL, I think, needs to follow in the same model. A few years ago, it was awful how CFL games were all over the place, like literally Tuesdays, Mondays, Wednesdays. That's not the way you build a television footprint. That's not the way you build a TV fan base. And so that's the other thing that I think they can do to appeal to younger viewers is make it more social by making it more consistent. And I'll just put it out there that with the NFL focused on Sunday and Hockey Night in Canada still being a big deal on Saturdays, why not build on the success that they've had with Friday Night Football and make that one of your anchor 2 or 3 nights? I know that that puts pressure on Thursday Night Football, but I'm not convinced that the CFL needs to be Thursday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday and the odd date. So those are just some of the things that I think would pay off dividends. But I got to tell you, it is a tough nut to crack. The CFL has tried. It's identified the fact that it needs to, get younger fans, but most of the fan bases haven't gotten younger. The youngest fan base in the league is the Ottawa Redblacks, and they're the most recent team in the league. Hamilton Tiger Cats, believe it or not, are right with them. And then, of course, you've got it doesn't matter what age you are a Saskatchewan Roughrider fan if you live in the province of Saskatchewan. Otherwise, you don't leave your house at night, basically. So those are some of the things that I would suggest they need to do. And that's why this XFL collaboration is such an interesting thing, because I don't know about you guys, but I don't remember the CFL creating more buzz than it did when these statements came out. And all of a sudden, the CFL seemed sexier because it was thinking about getting into bed with the XFL. And go where you want with that, that use of terms. But the fact of the matter is, it made younger fans who are completely gobbled up right now by the NFL say, CFL, XFL, The Rock, it's interesting. Now, it doesn't mean it's real. It doesn't mean it's substance. But from a marketing point of view, you have to give credit where credit is due. When you've got the multi-millions of Twitter followers and Instagram followers that The Rock has, you're reaching a lot of young fans. And it's so ironic, guys, that XFL, what could be XFL 3.0 in partnership with the CFL, it is Dwayne The Rock Johnson who made his break, made his career on WWE after the company that owns WWE vacated XFL the year before. It's pretty interesting economics. It's pretty interesting politics. It's pretty interesting family tree, so to speak.
Absolutely. I want to transition to sports betting. The C-218 bill here before. Yeah, I mean, we could talk to you for hours about, fascinating, all this stuff. Though do you have a hot take, Elk versus Elks, before we completely move off the Edmonton conversation? Yeah, a hot take on that?
I think they could have made it work either way, but I do think Elks is a little bit more, how can I say, I give a slight edge to Elks over Elk. Now, if they would have went with Elk, it's arguably, you could market a little bit younger because it's something that younger fans get more than us baby boomers kind of thing. You can also build around the fact that we are one, right? This 12 man team is one. It's the Elk, and we are the Elk, the whole community. They could have had some fun with that, and maybe I'm convincing myself that I should lean that way. But I think with Edmonton Elks, there's also recognition that the CFL can't go from an average age of 54 as their fans to 34 overnight. They have to find a way to capitalize on the longtime fans to make sure that the kids of those baby boomers are into the CFL value proposition. So I don't know if it's a hot take or not, but I think they could have made it work either way. Either of those two is head and shoulders above any of the other names that were being contemplated, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I wanted this C-218 thing is fascinating to us. We've talked about it a while on the show now. Just my take, because you're going to go with this, and that's why we brought you on. I don't like the idea of doing this. I listened to 3 Down last week. We have Hodge and Dunk, and they go, well, this is great. The CFL loses 10 to 20 million a year. This is going to bring in 20 million a year. Then all we have to do is figure out Montreal and Toronto, and we're in the green, baby. And I'm like, to break even with this, that's my take, and I want to hear what you have to, because I'm sure you have way more thoughtful responses than I do.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think there's a lot of moving parts around this, and so I respect all the the other opinions. But to me, maybe to build on what you're saying there, Reid, to me, this has got to be part of a complete revamp. This is not just adding single CFL game wagering to the mix. This is leveraging a new way of doing business at every friggin' level of the league. And you're only going to make the most of the sports betting revenue if you've got other stuff also established. And I do think it's an opportunity to rebrand the CFL. And I also think that if it's CFL/XFL, it's even stronger from a betting point of view, because people, not that there's anything wrong with the domestic leagues. I mean, the CFL is an institution. To this day, it still has the second biggest annual single-day sports television event in the country, in the Grey Cup. Only the Super Bowl is bigger on an annual basis. So when it comes to the CFL, they need to capture, keep their baby boomer audience as much as possible. But whatever they do with sports betting, it's got to be part of a full meal deal, rebranding, repositioning of the league. And the point I was going to make, and I lost it there in one ear out the other, is the fact that although the domestic leagues are strong, and the Canadian Elite Basketball League and the Premier League in soccer are real good domestic leagues, the top tier is viewed as the North American leagues. And so if, the NFL, NHL, MLB, NBA, and MLS were joined by another North American football league, and that's on the betting side of things, I think it has more of an impact, because our planet, there's a lot of stuff that is marketed in the United States that comes here to Canada as well. You don't want to create an artificial wall. So that's one thing that, is interesting to see. Is this going to be just the CFL tapping into betting, or is this going to be only fully realized once it's the CFL and the XFL together? I think it's just an interesting question to ponder. But back to your point, this has got to be about changing the game experience for fans. This has got to be about having betting kiosks at Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton and in all the other stadiums in between. This is about having betting lounges, possibly even in the end zones, at these various CFL games. This is about providing club opportunities, club membership opportunities, to get a little bit more data in terms of betting lines and the latest parlay of the week. So I think if you just say, yeah, we'll just put our games up, you're not going to be successful. You'll get a boost, absolutely. It'd be better than what you have right now. But in order to make this thing truly meaningful for the Canadian Football League, it has to be fully integrated into a new business plan. And I still think it has to be targeted towards younger fans. And all those elements of seeing football and betting will make for more of a fan base, because you guys have probably talked about it on the Markcast over and over again. If you bet on something, you have more of an interest in that. And it doesn't have to be just your favorite team. If I bet on two teams that are not my favorite teams, guess what? I'm going to be more likely to be watching, tracking my iPhone, following social, if not, downloading the game itself, simply because I've got that kind of a vested interest. So I think it's comprehensive. It's not just slapping a "we're open for business," but it's really thinking about what they can do with the various provincial lottery corporations to market this in a big way so that every CFL game becomes more of an event than it's been in recent years.
My last question for you today, just so we can, I've been so gracious with your time coming on here. All these things that could be done, right? You know, all the sports lounges and the betting and all this stuff, changing the business model. Do we think the CFL is equipped to do that?
You know what? It's probably the most important question of our entire time together. And my honest answer is, I don't know. And I don't know simply because there's been some great conceptualization by Randy Ambrosie, in terms of different ways and innovation to move forward. But there's also been that sort of approach without dealing with the core of the business. And I still think that your core, just like, for the three of us, the best way we stay in shape is start with our core. You have a strong core, the rest of your body comes along for the ride. It's the same thing with the CFL. And the inability to corral Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver in a better way is a concern to me. Having said that, this XFL discussion forces the CFL to ask itself the most existential questions. And maybe you get that unanimity that you've never had before. And again, I don't want to get caught up in it, but I've seen really smart commissioners get railroaded, get compromised because the Board of Governors didn't have one vision. And yes, it's the job of that commissioner to sell the Board of Governors, to manage upwards. But I do think that Randy Ambrosie has shown a real business panache. I think now it's just a question of priorities. What you do first, and then maybe some of the other stuff you get involved in down the road. But when I look at some of the ownership groups, and I'll just speak to two right out of the gates, the Argos with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and the Calgary Stampeders, part of Calgary Flames Sports and Entertainment. There's some really good marketers associated with those organizations. And if they haven't been able to crack the code, maybe it's because the league hasn't been able to get all the markets together. I think you try to learn from the best in the business who've got vested interest in other sports, and you also learn from the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Like, look at what they're doing with fans. There's all kinds of fans now excited that there could be a Mosaic Stadium full of fans this fall. Well, you could be 5 years removed from the pandemic, and if there was a stadium full of fans in Montreal, in Toronto, and in Vancouver, the CFL would be home free.
Absolute superstar. Thank you so much for coming on. I mean, I could talk. I mean, Matt and I are typing questions in the comments. We could talk to you for 8 hours. I mean, this is truly remarkable stuff. Thank you so much for taking the time today to come on. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Reid and Matt, always a pleasure. Certainly, you invite me whenever I can make it work time-wise, I will. Best of luck with everything that you're doing. What you guys are doing right now at the Markcast comes at one of the coolest times, I think, to be a football fan, just because there's all this sense of newness. Yes, there's a lot of uncertainty for purists of the CFL, but there's newness like I've never seen before on so many different fronts. That's what's going to make your podcast continue to be very interesting. And certainly, I'd love to be able to continue the conversation sometime. Thanks for having me on.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Have a good day and take care.
All the best, guys.
Matt, did you know that our show is sponsored in part by Manscaped.com?
I did recently learn that.
Matt, have you ever given any thoughts to male grooming and support for your needs?
Yeah, you could say that.
Now, I would encourage you. Paul got us on this. You know, Paul's got the Lawnmower 4.0. I've got the Lawnmower 4.0 now. It's great. It's wireless. It's waterproof. It's got a light on it. You can use it in the shower. It's good for men. It's good for women. It's really nice. It's something that, you know, I'm a hairy man anyway, but it is nice. We're moving into summer. Now, is this ever something that you would consider purchasing in your spare time?
Most definitely. I too am a very hairy man, so it would be something that comes in handy for sure.
So you get 20% off. You get free shipping with our code. Use the code Markcast at manscaped.com. I joked last week, 3 Down Nation now is supported by Manscaped as well. So if you want to stick it to 3 Down Nation and support the Markcast, use our code Markcast. Don't use, you know, Homer Nation or whatever their code is, but use Markcast.com, Markcast code at manscaped.com to take care of all your male grooming needs. We want to thank Tom very much for coming on the show. Really appreciate him sharing his time and expertise. Do you feel like you learned a lot talking with Tom?
Definitely.
That's fun. We record these out of order. So I was like, oh, maybe Tom totally blew it. And it was, no, I'm not kidding. Anyway, so thank you, Tom. We still got Paul coming up in the show, so make sure you stick tuned for that. Paul McCallum with the XFL and the CFL. Just an interesting quote. Farhan was talking on the friend of the show, Jason Greger. He thinks Randy Ambrosie will survive the pandemic turmoil as a commissioner. He says, I'll be honest, I really like him. He's got vision. He's not afraid to think outside the box and not afraid to take arrows. How have you thought that the great commissioner of the CFL, Randy Ambrosie, has done in the time now that we have been covering the CFL?
I mean, I think everybody would wish for a little more transparency. That's kind of been established. But in terms of what he's been doing, I can't say he's done anything too bad. Like there's nothing... I can't. If I was more of a diehard CFL fan, I at the moment wouldn't be calling for his job, at least, especially if his plan works and they get on the field. People are probably going to look at him more as a hero.
Well, that's true, right? Was it live long enough to, or be the hero, or live long enough to become the villain, or whatever? You know, he did really sit with me last week. We had Scott Stinson on, and he was talking about how Ambrosie, he does have these big visions, and maybe we don't need big visions. Maybe we can focus more on, you know, Montreal, Toronto, BC. That really stuck with me, and that will continue to stick with me. That, you know, maybe the XFL, and we're looking at the betting, and we're looking at the global stuff, but maybe, you know, maybe we could be sitting a little bit more at home. I don't know. I just always thought that was really stuck with me last week. Farhan, we got just go. Farhan was making the rounds. He also was talking about how he wants an NH style percentage cap to make the CFL quarter salaries more sustainable. Are you a big NHL guy with the salary cap?
I'm not a huge business side of the NHL guy, but I am kind of an NHL fan. But I am aware of how that works. It's basically, well, in terms of the CFL, how they would do it, it'd likely be sort of a forced Tom Brady-like pay cut. Like, you know how he takes pay cuts to just be able to spread the money out to the rest of the team? It'd kind of be like that. I mean, if you have a great quarterback that's making all the money, that's cool. But if he can't stay upright, or he doesn't have people to throw to, or a defense to stop anything, then it's useless. So I like that idea. You got to spread the money around if you want your teams to be successful.
Yeah, I don't like reducing salaries. I mean, I get that we're kind of trying to reduce it to expand that to other players, but you know, I mean, when the quarterbacks are making $700,000, I know that's a lot for the CFL, right? But you know, I mean, what did Dak Prescott, you know, $140 million for 4 years or whatever? I mean, like, what are we doing here? Like, well, 700,000. You know, we really you gotta cap on that. But no, I mean, it's interesting. Again, it's just, Farhan is big on like making cuts. We're talking about seasonal employees. We're talking about cutting down things. And I just can't, I don't feel like you can grow with that. I don't feel like you can grow sustainably with like nickel and dime, like penny pinching, while also.
At some point you got to stop trimming the fat and like start building back up onto something.
Yeah. Just congrats to Farhan, though. He did retire from coaching. Last week, he announced Hayek football after 18 years. You know, I know Farhan's been on the show before. He really passionate about that and coaching the high school football, and he like tons of press, and everyone gave him congrats and stuff. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Farhan. One other thing, we missed this last week. I think this came out right after we recorded. Did you see all this Arash yelling at Bob Young from the Ticats? Did you see all this on Twitter?
I did not, no. Must have missed that.
So this is, so, we talked last week, Arash saying that the teams aren't all on the same page, all that stuff. Bob Young, owner of the Ticats, have come out and said, we're playing all that stuff. So he goes, all CFL teams are keen to play as soon as possible. Our tweets about playing are a response to pessimistic press stories. So then this is all on Twitter. Arash writes, oh, it's the media's fault. Of course, Bob. All wanted to play last year, and it was the media's fault too, right? And, because obviously some didn't want to play last year, and the media reported that. So then Bob tweets back, don't worry, I love the Canadian sports media, even when they are wrong. And he goes, then Arash finally dropped the hammer. He goes, were they wrong when they reported the score of the 2019 Grey Cup? Holding it to you that we'll have Canadian football this fall. Dicey stuff there. What do you think about friend of the show, sometimes friend of the show, Arash Madani?
Sometimes I like his fire and sometimes I don't. But no, I think I agree with him on this one. I think it's like too early for the Ticats owner to be saying stuff like that. Obviously you want to be on the field, but everyone does.
I think, it was a lot of like, I think I said like trying to be on the right side of history. Like, well, we want them to know that we were going to play. So no matter what happens, like we're going to be fine. But it is, I just like that it's basically what I do with people, but Arash is just way more like famous and popular and whatever, but, or unpopular, but I do like trolling the CFL team owners. I think that is tremendously fun. We're going to take a break here real quick. We're going to come back. We got some more XFL stuff. We got, CFL media tweeting about National Hamburger Day, which is wonderful to hear about. So we're going to take a break here and we'll be right back. One other note I forgot to mention I had in the show, I did like that the CFL Twitter account was tweeting about National Burger Day this last week. This was in all the turmoil. This was before the Edmonton thing. I think this was like on Memorial Day, which, I don't think they celebrate in Canada, but I don't think it's like the same holiday. But they were tweeting about National Burger Day. I said, wow, at least the CFL is staying busy with that. All this other stuff going on, but we're tweeting about National Burger Day. This is exciting. This. You follow the Spring League. What do you think about the Argos re-signing McLeod Bethel-Thompson?
I'm excited for him. I think that's awesome. I loved him in the Spring League. He was not only great at on the field, he was a fun character. I remember talking to Mike Mitchell a little while back, and because it seemed like Bethel-Thompson just kind of disappeared for a while. And so I asked Mike what he was up to, and he was saying he was holding out for a starting job somewhere. It looks like he found it.
Yeah, I just thought when they announced the Spring League rosters this year and McLeod Bethel-Thompson wasn't on there, I was very surprised, and I was curious. It's been quiet. The Aviators have just totally fallen apart this year without him on the team. You've been watching the Spring League, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Aviators have definitely not been doing nearly as good as they did with him.
Yeah, anyway, so that's exciting. Congrats to him. I'd love to get him on the show. I think he's a fun guy. I think he's a rowdy kid, so that would be fun. A couple other notes. There was I have my wonderful, you can't see it here, my Fitzmagic Washington football shirt that came this week. I ordered one from my mom as well. She's a big Fitzmagic fan. I said, do you want one for your birthday? She goes, I would love one. So I got one for Mama at Markcast. But the Richmond Times Dispatch did this phenomenal article about why Taylor Heinicke should be the starter, and Fitzpatrick should be after. What are your thoughts on the the QB dilemma in Washington with Heinicke?
Well, I get why most NFL fans that aren't too familiar with Heinicke would be more high on Fitzpatrick, but having seen Heinicke play and what he did last year in the playoffs, you got to give him a chance. He's younger. You have a potential future quarterback for your franchise with him. You got to give him the opportunity. Fitzmagic runs out of gas at some point almost every season. So if you need to, you can put him in if Heinicke doesn't work out. But I think you have to give Heineke a chance because you have your potential future quarterback. The whole team was rallying around him last year too, so it's going to be tough to have somebody or your team rally around someone that hard and then bring in a new leader and be like, no, this is the guy now. But I mean, it happens all the time. So
yeah, I think maybe you do a Tua thing in Miami. You know, Fitzmagic starts the season, and then, you know, we have Heineke start kind of later on. But I'm going to be, Washington's my team. I'm all in. I got my jersey and everything. So I'm going to be very, very excited about that. But I just thought I love that even the DC media is picking up on the Heineke thing. The Packers signed DeAndre Tompkins, right? Former Penn State talent. He was on the Defenders. They signed him as a wide receiver. Obviously, all of that's going on with Rodgers in Green Bay. Do you have any hot takes on the Rodgers situation?
I mean, I'm sure that's not quite the weapon that Rodgers was wanting, but I mean, hey, it's more people to throw to. So take what you can get.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah, Rodgers wants, hey, I need my wide receivers. Well, here you go, former DC Defenders.
Yeah,
yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, not quite the weapons that I love that. Not quite the weapons that Rodgers is asking for. A couple other a sad note here. I will say, friend of the show, Josh Johnson. When we incorrectly reported that he was on the COVID, that he got cut last year from the 49ers when he was on the COVID reserve list. And he tweeted at me on Christmas Day, 8 a.m, and said, "You are incorrect on your podcast. I'm not cut. I'm on the COVID reserve list." He has been released from the 49ers. As someone he's played in a lot of teams for a lot of years. Are you surprised by that move from the 49ers?
Unfortunately, I'm not surprised by it just because I can't remember the numbers of how many times he's been cut by the 49ers specifically, but it's a good amount that he's been signed and cut by them. So it's unfortunate because obviously they like something that they see with him if they keep bringing him back, but he just hasn't gotten the opportunity that he's wanted. So it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's sad. When the 49ers were moving up to number 3, you had to wonder, like, yeah, Josh Johnson, we don't feel too good for him in this world, but anyway, that came out this week. I don't know if he's going to get picked up anywhere right now. I mean, certainly not as a starter. I mean, even the backups, most places are kind of taken care of. I mean, he could do, because he wasn't on the 49ers last year. I mean, they brought him on, midway through the season, right after Garoppolo got hurt. So, I mean, maybe something like that happens, but I do feel terrible for him. One last XFL note. Did you see any of this Memorial Day sale stuff?
Their graphic that said sale and stuff. I saw someone commented on it and said it looks like they took a picture on like a carpet or something. Yeah, it definitely was kind of low budget, it looked like.
Yeah, the first news we've gotten from the XFL since the CFL talks was a Memorial Day sale. And it was literally just like, it was like a storefront, like what you have in a cafe, like standing out on the street code, and they had like sale. Yeah, and it was like they laid it on the carpet and like took a cell phone photo of it. And so I tweeted, I said, wow, this looks, I can't remember what I said, like, graphic design is my passion or whatever. And so then, but they did fix it. They updated it. So I said, well, if the XFL is listening to me, I also have some other ideas. If you would like to do, if you would like to follow along with that. We're going to bust through Spring League here and then get out of here. The only big game I watched this week was the Conquerors Linemen. I've worked like every Saturday. I've still never seen my Jousters play. Memorial Day weekend, it was hard. What have been your thoughts on the Spring League so far?
Well, sadly I didn't catch the games this last week. I was doing stuff with family, but I've caught all the other games so far, and it was a slow start to the season, which you would probably expect with 5 days together as a team. But it's, in my opinion, gotten better as every week, basically. You have, just the level of play has been getting better every week. As you can tell, the teams are getting more comfortable with each other. I love the announcing on it, and all the XFL kind of like throwbacky tech stuff they've got with the replay and all that. I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah, so really slow start. I think the play has been there. It was weird this week. They moved around. Josh Davis was reporting they moved around, like DeAndre Francois. He was with Fan Control Football. He's on the Generals now, and Nick Fitzgerald went to the Blues. Something about like he didn't like the coaching, that he was hard on. He was being coached too hard on the Blues. Who is that there? Is that Terry Shea? Who's the Blues coach?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
I think it's Ted Contrell. Ted Control. And he's a big, scary guy. So, I mean, I can see DeAndre Francois be like, I don't want to deal with that. I did watch the Conquerors Lineman game. Phenomenal game. This was the best game of the season. They were already calling it the best game that's ever been in Spring League. Silvers was out there. The Prince that was promised, throwing bombs, my Seattle Dragons. I got my shirt. But it was great. They went to overtime, and this was we have been all heard about this. Okay, what is the overtime going to be? And it was the most confusing overtime rules ever. And it was literally like a 3-minute explanation. Like they win it. So Glanville and then Hal Mummy went out. So that was kind of cool because it was like, like a shootout in the Old West, right? Hal Mummy and they're out there. And so they do like a 10-minute overtime. And did you follow in the overtime rules, like when they announced all this, when they announced the league rules for this year?
I thought that it was just like how the NCAA does it, but I could be wrong.
Well, it's like, so the one guy picked the spot, right? So like, one person picks the spot, and then they pick like the direction they go, and then the other one decides if they're on offense or defense. So like, I think like Glanville was like, okay, we're going to be at like the 20-yard line going the other way. And then Hal Mummy or whatever was like, okay, well then we want to be on defense because we want to stop. It was like very confusing. It was like one person picks a spot and then the other person picks possession.
Okay, yeah, that's not at all what I thought it was. Yeah, I think I'm confusing it with the ELF. ELF had the NCAA's overtime rules.
I think you're right. It was just like bizarre. And like even the announcers and like the coaches were out there. But anyway, it was amazing. Silvers threw an illegal forward pass, in overtime, almost won the game. The lineman won, but it was great. It was like 57-40. I don't know, whatever the score is. It was the highest scoring. It was a total shootout. Just really phenomenal stuff. I was really proud to be a TSL fan. But then that late game starts like at 9:00, and you're like, or I think it was like 10:00. It's like, who is watching this game?
Yeah. Feel bad for East Coast people for sure.
Oh my God. It's like, it was like 2:30 in the morning. I'm like, this is crazy. Finally, just the last TSL thing. This was sent to me. Jerry Glanville. This was in 1988 between the Browns and the Oilers. And there was this whole thing about how, with the instant replays and everything. So the Browns had 12 men on the field. And when Jerry was the Oilers head coach, he was so upset. He tried to punch one of the referees at halftime. And it's this phenomenal video. Please tweet at me. I'll send it out. But it's like this 5-minute thing about how Jerry Glanville was so upset about the instant replay. And just as someone that's watched Jerry, coach on all these, weird leagues and spring league and all this stuff, it was really funny to see Jerry almost punch referee. So,
yeah, it was awesome.
Did you watch that? Did you enjoy that?
I did. I found that one.
Did you send that over? Someone sent that over to me. Final notes today, jam-packed show. We're flying through all this. Fan Control Football. I have not talked to you obviously on the podcast ever about Fan Control Football. Are you excited for season 2?
Yes and no. Like now that there's going to be more, at least 11 on 11, if not 12 on 12 football, I'm more interested in that. And I'd imagine a lot of the players are too. But I'll have my eye on it. I'm gonna see. It was fun last year for a while, aside from all the rule confusion. But it'll be cool. I believe they're expanding as well.
Yeah, this was per Fan Control Football News on Twitter, and I guess this was all posted on Republic on their like funding page because they weren't going to announce any of this yet. And then our Reddit user 7 and 2 make 10 originally found this. I don't know. They're just giving credit where credit's due here, but they're supposed to start branding in June. Funding's going to end in July, and the next season is slated to start in the fall with games being on Tuesdays. Houston and Atlanta are expected to hold tryouts again, as well as other southern cities. What do you think about fan control football playing in the fall, even if it is on Tuesday?
I mean, you limit the amount of players that are available to you. Like, you're going to have a lot more players that would probably rather be on an NFL practice squad, or if the CFL is getting ready to play, they'd probably rather do that. It's going to be tough time of year wise, but I'm sure you'll still find people.
Yeah, I'm sure that is the thing. I'm sure we'll find people. I think it's exciting. I don't know. I think it's hard. You don't exist in the bubble. You know, even if you're trying to be an alternate league or whatever, you still exist with all of these other teams. And now with the USFL, with the XFL, with the CFL, it gets to be very, very crowded. So
yeah, we're getting almost oversaturated in alternate football at this point, which is crazy.
You got ELF, you got all these. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. So anyway, that was my notes today. Matt, how do you feel like, did you have fun on the show?
Yeah, it's been a good time. Thanks for having me on.
We got big USFL. We got the Elks. I think we covered all the stuff today. We gotta go work. You got family stuff. So if anything else breaks today, the show's in the can. But I really appreciate it. You know, Paul's off. Like I said, out of town. We'll get the gang back together here, and really appreciate. Please like and subscribe. If you are a fan of what we do here, all the news. I'm going to put the little bugs and stuff, the subscribe bugs. But thanks again for stopping by, and take care and stay safe.